get into this. I'm delighted to be here with these two amazing people. What we're going to do today is to be talking about the book that they have collaborated on, which is called Zakir Hussain, A Life in Music. I'm not going to even try to introduce Zakir Hussain Saab or Nasreen Muni Kabir because they are no strangers to this audience at all. What I do want to say by way of introduction is that this book, and we will not talk too much about what's in the book, but I do want to point to it, is an amazing feat of collaboration between two people who have made their place in the world of music and cinema internationally and in India. Both of them in some ways straddle both worlds. The book is filled with wonderful stories about Zakir Saab's childhood, about how he learned from his father, about living with all the greats of the time, and then about interacting with musicians in the so-called Western world, different forms of music, classical music, jazz, and so on, and the things that he feels empathy with, but also with a tremendous sense of family, community, passion, compassion, love for his art, and just the excitement and inspiration of communicating with different audiences across the world. And Nasreen's part in this book, it's her idea, it's her 17th book, the 18th with Gulzar Saab is already out in the market. And Nasreen has more or less single-handedly been following in a tradition which wasn't a very, very strong tradition of making a place for Indian cinema, both in India and in the outside world, of really looking at a form that was marginalized, of giving it the credibility that it deserves, of placing it inside the mainstream of Western media. And in this book, you see her skill at work, because the questions she asks are almost one-liners, almost innocuous, but they lead into something really, really interesting. And this conversation carried on across a long period of time, over continents, encapsulates in it the kinds of contributions that both these people have made to the art and the music and the writing that they're part of. So with that, I want to start the conversation by asking you, Zakir Saab, two questions. One is, if you can think of, from the book or outside of it, one particular story from your childhood about what was really inspirational for you that you would like to tell this audience. And the second is a question that after the film, after the book, I don't know you personally at all, but the sense I get is of a tremendous, deep modesty and humility despite the huge achievement. Where does that come from? Why is it that all the awards, and there are many, and the film talks about that, don't, chati tan ke and all of that, they don't seem to sort of...
Well, first of all, good morning to everyone. Thanks for doing this for us, Urvashti ji. And a very respectful pranams to Gulzar Saab, Adab. And I just wanted to say that for me, as a student, learning this art form, it was never hammered into my head that I was doing something gigantic, that I was conquering the highest peak of the Himalayas, or achieving some extraordinary elevation of understanding or revelations of any sorts. So it was normal to be doing this music. It was normal to practice. I was not in any way put into a place where I had to be in awe or nervous or terrified of anything that I'm trying to achieve playing the music. It was supposed to be just fun, just enjoying ourselves, just having a good time with the music and letting my friendship with my instrument and the language that we spoke, which was the language of music, just evolve into our story. And that's what it was all about. And that's exactly how I feel when it comes to, any kind of labels of success that are attached to whatever I have done. I don't feel that I deserve those. I just feel that why is it that I'm getting this when I'm just doing something that I enjoy, love, and I have fun with, and it's something normal. It's an everyday routine. Why is it something of juggernautic achievements? Why? And so that's one thing. And secondly, I've noticed since my childhood, having grown up, every dog has his day. And I may be the dog today. But that's all I am, a dog. And there's no point in trying to make this last forever. Nothing lasts forever. And so there's no point in getting used to it. There's no point in trying to be an ustad or trying to be a Padma Bhushan or a whatever else, or a platinum winner of records or Grammy winner or whatever. There's no point in that. Those are just little stops of loving remembrances and special blessings that are put upon you by the people who believe in what you're doing. And that's what it is. It's a pat on the back, and all it says is, well, you're on the right track. It doesn't say you've arrived, you're at the pinnacle, you've achieved everything. It's because being the best will never happen. But being better is always achievable. So that's exactly how I feel. So none of this really, this whole Maya situation is not something that really bothers me. And as far as childhood is concerned, I flashed on a memory while walking into this room. I was 14 or something, and there was a company called Monitor Records that sent some people from America to India to see if they could create a stereo recording of Indian classical music. So, because they connected with Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, he said, well, there's my student in India who's very good. His name is Shamim Ahmed. So you should record him. And my tabla maestro who travels with me, Allah Rakha Bhai, his son Zakir plays with him. So you record them. So just across in the recording studio, we did Indian classical music's first stereo recording. And it was very interesting because it was a very difficult thing to come to terms with. They put Shamim Ahmed Khan Saab at one corner of the room. They put me in the another corner of the room because they said they wanted to achieve separation of channel. So the right channel could have him and the left channel could have me, and people could, turn back and forth and enjoy the stereo. They forgot totally that we needed to hear each other and have eye contact to be able to play. So it was a trying experience, but we finished the recording. But after the recording was over, we were marched into this very sound stage. And they had created this little set where we sat and we had our photo session. And it was inspiring in the sense that someone like Pandit Ravi Shankar had chosen Shamim Bhai and myself, who were nobodies really, to be doing this. And more than anything else, coming from a great musician like that, it was, some sort of not only a blessing, but a nod of recognition of where we might be at that time as musicians, and seeing something in us that maybe gave him a glimpse of what our future might be. And so seeing that and having that happen to me was a very inspiring experience. I have that LP somewhere at home with that photo taken right in here. I was 14 years old, so I just flashed on it. Just happened.
Today, today that photo might have been a selfie actually, if there was one. Muni, let me turn to you. Somewhere in the book, Zakir Saab says that the role of somebody who is accompanying a great musician is like a conversation. And the conversation doesn't just drop from the skies and you just don't jump into it without any background, but you actually have a framework in your mind, or something broad in your mind, within the parameters of which that conversation takes place, and within which you can experiment and enrich and so on and so forth. For you, working on this book, given, in a sense it's a departure, and in a sense it's not a departure, because the broader frame is cinema, performance, acting, music, etc. You worked on Bismillah Khan, you worked on Lata Ji, and so on. But in some ways, it is a bit of a departure also. So I want to ask you, because you don't say it much in the book, your presence is very, hidden almost. But what were some of the challenges in putting into words a life of music? And what were some of the challenges of working with someone who is constantly on the move?
Well, I would, it's a very interesting question, Urvashi, and I would first like to start by thanking Zakir Saab's wife, Antonia, who is here in the audience, who made it absolutely possible that the book got completed, because Zakir Saab is so busy and she is so meticulous. So the combination really worked in my favor. I would also like to thank Nirmala ji, Shantanu Chaudhary, and the publisher HarperCollins, who were absolutely behind this book from day one. The question you ask is a very, very important one. Basically, the conversations are really about understanding what makes an artist think. And whether it is a filmmaker or a painter or a musician, they all have certain things in common. They have certain personality traits in common. And you have to try and understand what they are. And that will make the books individual books. Whether you're working with Gulzar Saab, who's very kindly here, or you're working with Zakir Saab, or you're working with Lata Ji, you have to try and understand who they are. And then you shape your questions. In terms of the leap between cinema and music, obviously there is a big leap, because classical music has a tradition and a form which is thousands of years old as compared to the form of music in cinema. However, here I will say Zakir Saab was incredibly helpful to me. He understood that I am not a music expert, and he decided to take a risk, because I could have actually asked him extremely stupid questions, and that would have ended the book. I don't think it would ever been published. So he was very, very helpful in making things articulate. He also teaches tabla, he also teaches music, which means he is used to naive questions, if I can say so. And he is also, that book, to me and other people who have read it have commented that he has opened the doors to demystifying what classical music in India is. And that is very important. The other night, Urvashi, I must say that we went to Zakir Saab's concert, and the quality and the amazing level of music and musicality is quite extraordinary. And actually, if anything, I felt, will he accept someone who's worked in cinema? because I always thought maybe he will think no, but he was so generous and he talked about his own experiences working in films and how he respected all the musicians and how they were the first in his mind people who were making fusion music, because if we hear the music of C. Ramachandra or any of the greats of the 50s and 60s, you will see an amazing selection of instruments and how they all work together. So I will say, I'm giving you a very long answer, but I think that you basically have to find a way of gaining someone's trust for a conversation to work. And human beings are human beings, whether they are musicians, world-class musicians, or a humble taxi driver. People are people, and you must respect them, and hopefully you will gain their respect.
But in a sense, when you are structuring a book around a set of conversations with somebody, the conversations obviously are much larger than what goes into the book. So how do you decide what to keep in, what to leave out? Because every conversation is really rich. I mean, you can see the signs of it in the book. There must be so much more.
To be honest, nothing was edited out because Zakir Saab is very articulate. What happens in some cases is that if the person I'm talking to, for example, Lataji or whoever, speak in Hindustani, then I will be translating. So that is the only real change, but there's no editing. To be honest, I do make sure that the questions are very brief, because ultimately people are not reading it for questions, they're reading it for the answers. So keep that short. And I have a documentary background, which basically means you cut to the chase. So you don't have, in my documentaries that you know of, there's no questions. You don't hear the person sitting there with a beautiful sari asking the question. So therefore, what is the importance of these books is you have to keep it wider, so it's an autobiographical conversation, and you have to do something that will last, hopefully, many centuries down the line.
Zakir Saab, again, two questions that grow out of something that Nasreen just said and something, actually both things that she said, actually. One, she pointed to the help that your wife Antonia gave her, and that film was made by your daughter. And one of the things that stands out in the book is the support structure that is around you of the family and friends who have actually supported you in this. The other thing that she mentioned was your ability to translate complex ideas into fairly understandable language for a person who may not be familiar with those concepts. I found that because I'm not familiar with musical concepts, but this book helped me to understand, how instruments are made, how you actually play them, how you touch them, the difference between the sarangi and the sitar, and so there's so much there. I want to ask you, one, about the importance of support structures, which everybody knows, but nonetheless, what it has meant to you. And two, about pedagogy. What is the excitement of teaching and passing on the knowledge that you have? And what does it give back to you? Because the playing and the music and how you love it gives back something to you. The quality of what passing on your knowledge gives back to you. Is that different? Is that as exciting? And it's the same for you, because you share so much of your technical knowledge of cinema through your books. So and you also teach. So first you, Zakir Saab.
I'm sorry, I have a cold. So.
I feel that we as humans have a tendency of complicating answers when they can be very simply explained. When it comes to Indian classical music, like I mentioned earlier, I was allowed to find my way through it as a normal routine. I have seen my fellow students who've been terrified, have had traumatic experiences, simply because the first thing they found out was, well, this is an impossible thing to do. This will take 40 years for you to even understand the first sound. You will have to practice 18 hours a day for 20 years before you can even embark on calling yourself a student, and so on and on. So such scenarios painted by the maestros were not meant to actually in any way discourage you, but they were meant to point out to you the reverence that you must have for an art form. It would be the same for a painter or for a writer, for a sculptor. They would all teach their students to be precise and take your time and must work hard, etc., etc., etc. In the end, I felt that that kind of complicated entrance exam created in many young musicians of my time a certain amount of hesitancy in wanting to be able to play music. So I've always strived to find a way to simplify things. And so the first thing that I do is try to make it clear to whoever is sitting with me musically that, it's not a big thing. It's a simple thing. And it actually is. I mean, there are notes and there are rhythms. And what you basically have to do is find within yourself which one of those appeal to you, entice you, call you, inspire you, and in some ways naturally are on the same wavelength as you are. And once that is established, you have a clear understanding of where you want to go. And it's a simple thing. So let's not get worked up about it. So that's what I do. I try to make it as straightforward as possible. The other thing is visualizing what I do, what I play. If I cannot express, if I'm playing tabla and there's nothing here, it's all here, people are looking at me and looking at this whole package. They are not watching the surface of the tabla. So they have not necessarily, barring the first couple of rows, a clue of what's happening over here. Whatever's going on there should somehow transport itself through my body and come out. And for that to happen, it has to have a language that both physically and sonically can exist at the same level. And for that to happen, you must have a simple connection. You must have a clarity that is not steeped in complications. So that's what I try to do. And
that was so evident in the film, sorry to interrupt, but when you were playing and your whole body was, your face, the rest of your body was in the rhythm of what you were playing. It was really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, so for instance, if I'm playing a composition, I'm visualizing what's happening with it, but then it has to appear. I'm going walkabout. Di kridenna, da dinna, da ti da ti da da tinna. But as I'm going, I look up in the sky and I see the birds flying over. So di kridenna, da dinna, da ti da ti da da tinna, da da ti da da tinna. I continue my walk, but I've seen the birds. And so when I'm playing, I'm not just here, I'm going to be, I'll be visually walking it. And so in that sense, simplifying what's appearing here and putting a picture to it, a more clear picture, so that people can you know, have a dual effect of what musically is happening.
Wonderful way of putting it. Mini?
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's
So
really
that you see
beautiful.
there is a connection between cinema and music. So birds. But to answer your point, I think when somebody, in Zakir Saab's case and in other cases, when somebody masters something completely, they can simplify it immediately. I think in my experience, when somebody is not clear, they're going around the houses. When somebody is clear, they're very, very direct. So that really does come through. The other thing is that when you said about the documentary and the book format, the thing I learned from an editor many years ago, they said when you cut to somebody in an interview, they must only answer one thing. Because if you put in 3 things in their answer, no one will remember it. If you have one point, then you have the answer and it gets digested. So actually, even though some people may think that these books are just interviews, they're not really. They're very, very constructed so that it is very close to the documentary experience. You have one answer and you get to the next. The main thing I would like, if all the books are appreciated, and this one in particular, is that there should not be any clutter. And I don't like clutter in the house, and I don't like clutter in the mind. And when I read something, I want somebody to tell it to me very quickly and very precisely. So you know, Urvashi, you know haiku poems. They should be like haiku poems.
Yeah, I think in a sense, the deeper impact of the kind of questions you ask in this book and in the others is very evident in the editorial techniques you use in your documentary film. When you cut at just the right point, you join with other things. So you can see that technique very much at work here. I have many other questions to ask. I think we are, because of the time constraint, we don't actually have much time. I want to take a call. Do you have audience? Does the audience have any questions to ask? Because we are 12:10. Really, we have only 5 more minutes. Possibly we can stretch it to 7. So what would you like? Can I see if I can only see one hand. 2. Okay, we're going to take just 2 questions, and then we'll see if we have time to wrap up with one more question from me. Can I request you to keep them short, sir, please?
I'm Prahlad Singh Shekhawat from Jaipur. I'm a writer and freelance journalist. So thank you for your interesting views. And I'm a great admirer of Zakir Saab, of course. So in India right now, there's a big debate initiated by the Carnatic musician Krishna, who tries to reformulate the classical tradition in terms of its relevance today. And he includes words like Allah and Christ in the classical, themes and music. And also he tries to include the folk tradition. And he's very controversial. He was not allowed to play in Delhi, I think, recently. Finally, he was able to do it. But there is a big opposition trying to depart from the classical tradition. So, and you are trying to experiment yourself in that direction somewhat. So how do you look at those kind of departures from the tradition?
Zakir Saab, can I request you not to answer? We'll take the other question also. Yeah, please. Is there no woman in the audience who wants to ask questions? Yes. Sorry, let's have him first. He raised his hand first. We'll take 3 or 4 questions. Ma'am, you afterwards, and then one at the back. You raised your hand.
My name is Soumya. I'm from Mumbai only, and I've been listening to Zakir Saab's Jugalbandis with so many Indian artists. It's mind-boggling. So I wanted to ask you, which is your favorite instrument other than the tabla you like to collaborate with, which according to you makes music sound very soothing?
Well, first of all, thank you for being interested in the music. And I don't know, I have played with just about every instrument that there is on the planet at the moment. I mean, from the gimbri of Western Africans to the banjo, to the cellos or the basses or shenais and everything. And one thing that I've noticed while playing with these beautiful instruments all around the world is that there's so much more that I need to transpose onto my own instrument, the tabla. It's a fact that when you're playing with a musician that you've never played with before, or an instrument that you've never accompanied before, through the sound of that instrument or the sonic experience and conversation with that instrument, you actually get to have a new look into what you are all about, because you're seeing and hearing your sound through their ears and what they are doing and how they are looking at it. And so there are nooks and corners that you might have overlooked, that I might have overlooked, because they're just there in my house and I'm so used to having them around. But because of that interaction or a new interaction, I've noticed this one little element that I have ignored so long that actually makes this present conversation valid and more exciting and really fun to be involved in. And in doing so, it also adds to my repertoire and allows me to be, expanding and finding new ways to be able to speak my own language. And so I hope that I can keep finding new instruments that I can play with. But I just yesterday played with Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma and Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasia, and then right after that with Birju Maharaji. Now these are musicians and artists that I've been playing with for last 40 years. But you get to a point after about 30 years or so of playing with them that you say, okay, now I'm getting it. Now I'm starting to understand what they are all about, and now maybe I can be a better conversationalist with them and be able to interact with them at a different level. And I see that happening when I'm playing with musicians. So there's more to do with whatever is out there in the world and I have experienced with, and I hope it continues.
Can we take the two more questions that there were, ma'am? Yeah. Can you keep it really short because we're out of time?
Namaskar ji. I want to ask, which is your favorite ताल? Because I know सबसे कहते हैं तीन ताल पितामह होती है तालों में, और तीन ताल की तो महत्ता सबको पता है. आपकी क्या है? तिलवाड़ा, आड़ा चौताल या अधा या चांचर और जैसे?
Can we also take the question at the back, please? वो माइक आप दे दीजिए, पीछे ले जाएंगे.
In short, my favorite tal is one matra. Yes, because that's the universe. You can take 16 of those, 19 of those, 7 of those, or 11 of those. But in one beat, if you can express the movement of the planet, that is the challenge that you must face. Like I was showing the birds, that's not even one matra. So I feel that for me, the beat or the pulse is the biggest rhythm cycle to deal with. So if I'm going, there's the beat, finishing. So that's a whole matra. So within it, there's a hell of a lot to do. So whether you are before the beat, just after the beat, halfway up the beat, or somewhere in between, like looking at the petrol gauge. Okay, I have full tank, or just consider that to be one beat. And then how much time you have. When you're playing basketball, you have 20 seconds to drive the ball from one end of the court to the other, and then score either a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer in those 20 seconds. So, and some of us feel, well, 20 seconds is not a lot of time. Sometimes they have only 4 seconds to throw in the ball in and then score. And we think 4 seconds, that's not enough, but that's plenty of time. So for me, one beat has a lot of time, and it's just, I feel that if I limit myself to a particular rhythm cycle, then I'll be tied into that way of thinking, and it will not allow me to be able to be conversant in other elements of rhythmic ideas.
Okay, can you ask your question quickly, then we'll have to close.
Namaste, Ustad ji. I would just like to
Don't
ask
call
you.
me Ustad, call me Zakir.
Namaste, you're still my Ustad. What is the most important quality required to spend a life in music?
Love for it, passion for it. I guess you can, in that love, there are many degrees of love. So passion and all that craziness and everything is part of it. But if you don't love what you're doing, then it becomes work. Then you got to get up at, it's like you're a farmer waking up before the sun comes up to milk the cows and put the hay out and all that's work. Or getting ready for your 3-hour commute to office and stuff. That's not what this is. You must love and enjoy your music. If you don't do that, if you don't love and enjoy what you do, then why the hell are you in it? So it's the most important element is the love for it. My father used to always say, मैं तो सरस्वती का पुजारी हूँ, in Hindi. This is Saraswati. And मैंने इससे प्यार किया है और इसने मुझसे प्यार किया है. And that's what it is.
Would either of you like to respond to the question about T.M. Krishna and the artist and politics?
I don't know, I'm so sorry, but I don't know much of his work because I haven't heard it. But I think that everybody who is striving in today's world to do what they are defined by and their individuality, I think you have to ask him this question. I mean, who am I to say why he's adding words or taking out words? I'm sorry, I just feel that artists have their way of expressing, and sometimes it's a bigger picture. It's not always the literal A for apple, B for ball. Sometimes life is bigger, and we must accept they have a bigger vision.
Yes, I don't know why such a big deal is being made out of it. There's no reason for it, and we don't have the time in this world for this shit. There isn't, really speaking. I have to give you one clip of an interview of one of the greatest musicians of our country, Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab. He was being interviewed and he had recorded a bhajan, and the words were Hari Om Tat Sat. Those were the words. Now you're talking about a conservative Muslim singing Hari Om Tat Sat. So they asked him, I said, oh, Khan Sahab, why are you singing this? This is something Hindu. And you're a Muslim. He said, Bhai, ye to Allah ka naam hai. और मैं उसको उसी प्यार और भावना से और दुआ से गाऊंगा जैसे मैं अल्लाह का नाम लेता हूँ. So that is basically the feeling and emotion that exists. There's a composition is not Bhairav, Ahir Bhairav, Mero Allah Meherban. Okay, one of the first ones to sing that composition was Krishna Rao Pandit of Gwalior Gharana. So, I mean, what are we talking about? It does not make any sense to me that this should even be part of the conversation in our life. We live in a country which is a secular country. We are Indians. We are Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs and whatever afterwards. First, we are Indians.